You know what hit me this morning?
Should I be worried?
Stop, I'm being serious.
That's never a good sign.
Rude. Okay, tell me this. Why does coffee taste better when someone else makes it?
Because your own coffee comes with a to-do list. Someone else's comes with a moment to breathe.
Exactly. Mine feels like a chore. Theirs feels like a gift.
That might be the most insightful thing you've said all week.
Thank you. I'm evolving.
Slowly, but yes.
I knew you'd ruin it.
It's a talent. But honestly, that little thought reminded me of something my grandfather used to say.
Oh, now I'm paying full attention.
He used to say, still water runs deep.
That sounds wise and a little mysterious.
That's exactly how it felt to me as a kid. I thought, okay, are we talking about actual water right now?
Very relatable.
But now I understand it completely. The quietest people often carry the most. The calmest moments hold the deepest meaning.
That's the strange thing about growing older. Advice that once sounded too simple or a little dramatic suddenly starts sounding completely true.
And not just true, necessary.
Life has a way of making those old sentences land, usually at the exact moment you need them most.
Or the exact moment you weren't expecting them.
Also very true. Welcome back, English learners. You're listening to Mr. English Daily, your warm, relaxed space to grow your English through real, natural conversations.
I'm Leo.
And I'm Luna. And today we're talking about old advice, the things our elders used to say, the lessons they tried to pass on, and those quiet life moments that made us realize, wow, they were right.
We're talking about the lines that sounded ordinary back then, the ones we didn't fully understand, and the real experiences that made those words hit completely differently later.
Sometimes painfully differently.
Very true. Life has a real talent for bringing back an old sentence at exactly the right moment.
Or the wrong moment.
Also true.
And honestly, we think this episode might make many of you feel a little nostalgic.
In a beautiful way. The kind that brings back a voice, a room, a smell, a simple sentence, maybe even someone you still think about.
This is a B1 to B2 level episode, so you'll hear rich, natural English throughout. But don't worry if you miss something. Just relax, stay with the conversation, and let the English come to you.
And today's episode includes a word tour, useful B2 words and phrases woven naturally into the conversation. So while we talk about life, you'll also be picking up real English you can actually use.
Listen out for those expressions. Some are beautiful, some are practical, and some say a lot with very few words.
And before we get into it, if you enjoy learning English through warm, real conversations like this, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and come back and sit with us again.
And we'd love to hear from you in the comments. What is one piece of advice an elder gave you that you didn't understand back then, but now feels completely true?
I already know those comments are going to be good.
Same. Some might even hurt a little.
In the wisest way possible.
So, Leo, what's one piece of old advice you almost ignored completely, but now hear in your head every time life gets complicated?
Oh, I have a few. And honestly, the older I get, the less I enjoy how right they were.
That sounds like the beginning of a very personal complaint.
A peaceful complaint, but still a complaint.
Go on, then.
My father used to say, actions speak louder than words.
Ah, that one ages very well.
Unfortunately, yes. And the frustrating thing is, I've always loved words. Good words, warm words, confident words. I used to trust people who spoke beautifully.
A lot of us did. I remember someone from an old job. Perfect way of talking. Calm voice, big promises, always saying things like, "Don't worry, I'm with you. We'll handle it together."
And you believed him.
Completely, because he sounded dependable.
And then something went wrong.
A project started falling apart, not dramatically, just slowly, in that quiet, stressful way. Deadlines slipping, tension rising, people getting a little colder every day.
And his words stayed lovely.
But his actions disappeared. He still spoke nicely, still made promises, still sounded supportive, but when it came to staying late, helping properly, or sharing responsibility, he was suddenly nowhere.
That kind of thing really hits home.
And when something hits home, it doesn't just feel true in general, it feels true inside your own life. It lands in your chest, not just your head.
That's exactly it.
I went home that evening and I could almost hear my father's voice. Not loud, not dramatic, just there. actions speak louder than words.
Life has a way of repeating our elders at exactly the right moment.
It really does. And the worst part? I was stubborn about it at first.
Stubborn meaning you refuse to change your mind even when the signs are standing right in front of you.
That was me. I kept defending him in my head. No, he means well. He's just busy. I'm probably being unfair.
Ah, yes, the little speeches we give ourselves when reality is trying to be helpful.
And then I had to learn the hard way.
To learn the hard way means life teaches you through disappointment, mistakes, or pain instead of easy advice.
Not my favorite teacher, but a very effective one.
After that, I started paying attention to what people do when things become inconvenient. That's where character becomes visible.
Not in the easy moments, in the uncomfortable ones.
Exactly. You know, that reminds me of one my mother used to say all the time. A stitch in time saves nine.
Mothers love that one.
They really do. She used it for everything. Homework, sleep, money, health, family tension. It was less a proverb and more a whole operating system.
Very efficient mothers.
Extremely. And I used to roll my eyes every time, not because I disagreed, but because I thought, can one sentence really apply to this many things?
Apparently, yes.
Apparently, yes. What made it real for you?
Honestly, health. Not in a frightening way, just in a very real way. Someone close to me had a small problem, nothing huge, the kind of thing that felt easy to ignore.
The kind of thing people always say they'll deal with next week.
Exactly. It's probably nothing. Let me just get through this first.
Famous last words.
The frustrating part was, at the beginning, it was still manageable. One small step taken early might have been enough, but because it was delayed and delayed again, it became bigger, more painful, more complicated.
That is such a clear example of the proverb.
And that was the moment it truly landed for me. A stitch in time saves nine isn't just about fixing small mistakes quickly, it's about life. Early care saves you from something much heavier later.
Like life saying, please don't wait until the small problem grows teeth.
Exactly. And now the proverb feels reassuring to me.
Reassuring meaning it makes you feel calmer, steadier, a little safer.
Because it reminds me that giving attention to something early is often an act of kindness to your future self. Whether it's your health, your stress, your relationships, or one small task you keep avoiding.
Small care now can save a lot of pain later.
Wow, Leo, that was suspiciously wise. Have you been practicing lines in private?
I like to keep a few wise lines ready in case life suddenly hands me a microphone. But really, all of this takes me straight back to my uncle. He used to say another one, what goes around, comes around.
That one can sound like a warning.
The way he said it was never threatening, more like life remembers. Not in some magical way, just quietly. The way people remember kindness, the way care returns, the way disrespect leaves a mark.
I like that. Life remembers.
The moment it became real for me was very ordinary. I had just moved into a new apartment, exhausted, boxes everywhere, no proper routine, no proper meals, that strange feeling of living in a place that still doesn't feel like yours.
That unsettled phase.
One evening, I came home late, carrying too many bags, and realized I had left my wallet at the office.
Of course you had.
Naturally. So there I was, tired, hungry, holding groceries I couldn't pay for.
And the man at the small shop near my building looked at me, smiled, and said, "It's fine. Bring it tomorrow." Oh, that's lovely.
It was such a small thing, but in that moment, it felt enormous. He didn't know me well. I was just the quiet man from the building who always looked slightly tired.
Very strong image, Leo.
Accurate, unfortunately. But that moment stayed with me, not because of the money, because of the trust.
And then something happened later.
A few months later, I saw him outside trying to move a heavy delivery box alone, one of those impossible, too heavy boxes.
The kind that suddenly becomes everyone's problem.
So I put my bags down and helped him carry it inside. 2 minutes, nothing special. But he looked at me and said, "See, it comes back."
Aw, that's beautiful.
And that was the moment the proverb settled in me. What goes around comes around. Not like punishment, not like luck, just a simple truth that kindness often finds its way back.
That gives the proverb a completely different feeling.
It gave me perspective.
Perspective, the way you begin to see life more clearly from a wider and wiser angle.
After that, I stopped thinking of kindness as something small. I started seeing it as something that moves. One person makes life a little easier for another, and that person carries that same softness somewhere else.
That is a beautiful way to see it. And honestly, that reminds me of another one I've carried for years. All that glitters is not gold.
That one has survived every century for a reason.
It really has. And it fits modern life so well because now we have even more glitter, more polished images, more perfect-looking lives, more beautifully edited disappointment.
That should be on a mug.
I would buy it immediately. For me, that proverb became real through a job. Years ago, I was offered something that looked perfect from the outside. Great title, impressive company, lovely office, all the things that make people widen their eyes and say, wow.
But the shine wasn't the truth.
Not even close. The place looked polished, but the atmosphere felt cold. People smiled, but not warmly. The title sounded important, but the work itself left me drained in a very quiet way. I came home each day feeling smaller, not stronger.
That is a sad kind of mismatch.
It was, and that season was humbling.
Humbling, meaning life lowers your pride a little and reminds you that appearance and reality are often very different.
I had to admit I had been impressed by the surface. I was chasing what looked good, not what felt right. And slowly, that proverb started to resonate with me in a much deeper way.
When something resonates with you, it feels deeply true or meaningful. It stays with you.
It stayed. And now I think about that proverb not just when I see flashy things, but when I meet charming people, impressive opportunities, or perfectly polished lives online. Sometimes the shine is real. Sometimes it's only light on the surface.
That is beautifully said.
Thank you. I'll treasure that for at least 5 minutes.
Please do. But, out of all these old sayings, there's one that gets me most these days. Not loudly. In that quiet, sneaky way that catches you when you're not prepared. Time and tide wait for no man.
That one always carries a little ache, doesn't it?
It really does. When I was younger, I heard it as a warning adults gave when they thought you were wasting time. Stop being lazy, do something useful. But now it feels bigger than that. Softer too, and somehow sadder.
In what way?
In the family way, in the growing up way, in the I truly thought there would be more time way. I think of my grandfather a lot when I hear it. He was never the type to sit you down and give a grand speech. He was quieter than that. But every now and then, he'd say something small, almost in passing. Come by when you can. Time moves quickly.
And back then, it probably just sounded like one more sentence floating around the room.
Exactly. And that was young, busy, distracted, always rushing towards something, always thinking the important life was somewhere ahead of me.
We all think there will be another afternoon, another visit, another ordinary day that will always be there.
And then one day you realize the afternoons changed. The people changed. The house changed. Even your own voice changed. And suddenly a sentence that once sounded so simple feels enormous.
This whole part of the conversation is making me feel very nostalgic.
Nostalgic, that warm emotional feeling when the past comes back to you. Not just as a memory, but almost like a whole atmosphere returning.
Yes, that's the perfect word. Because when I look back on those years, I don't only remember what was said, I remember the whole feeling of it. The room, the tea, the slow ceiling fan, the sound of plates from the kitchen, the way evening light sat on everything so gently.
And nobody in those moments knew they were living inside a memory that would one day feel precious.
To look back on something means to think about it again from where you are now, with older eyes and a different heart.
Yes, and that proverb feels so true now because time really does move whether we are ready or not. People grow older while we're making plans. Seasons change while we're postponing conversations. Children become adults while someone is still saying, we should all sit together one day.
That one really sits with you.
In a quiet way, the kind that stays.
You know what I love, though? Not all of this old wisdom feels sad when it comes back. Some of it feels strong, almost steady, like a hand on your back when you need it most.
I know exactly what you mean.
My grandmother used to say, where there's a will, there's a way. And what gets me now isn't the sentence itself, it's her, because she lived it so fully, so quietly, so naturally, without ever turning it into a speech.
Tell me.
She didn't have an easy life. Not much comfort, not much rest, not much of extra anything. And yet she always found a way. A way to keep the house warm, a way to make food stretch, a way to help someone else even when she herself was tired, a way to carry on without making a performance out of her strength.
That kind of strength feels different, doesn't it?
It really does. It doesn't ask for attention, it doesn't try to impress anyone, it just holds life together quietly.
That is so beautiful.
And that's why the proverb feels different to me now. It doesn't sound loud or motivational. It sounds faithful. It sounds like someone deciding very quietly, life is hard, yes, but I'm still going to keep going.
That is such a powerful kind of hope.
A calm kind, a kitchen kind, a real life kind.
Kitchen kind is somehow the perfect description.
You know what I mean.
I do. And honestly, I think we grow into those old sayings.
To grow into something means it starts fitting you more naturally over time as you change and become ready for it.
Yes, the words stay the same, but we become people who can finally hold them properly. At 20, they sit near you. At 30, 40, 50, they sit inside you.
That might be the loveliest part of all this. Our elders weren't always giving us polished speeches or perfect lessons. Sometimes they were just leaving little tools behind, little protections, little truths. And years later, when life becomes more complicated, we finally reach for them.
We don't always receive wisdom when it is spoken. Sometimes we receive it much later when life finally gives a sentence a shape we can recognize.
Wow, Leo, that was very poetic.
I'm trying to earn my coffee.
Fair enough. Keep going. The coffee is still yours for now.
Thank you. But truly, that's what all of this feels like to me now. Not old people repeating themselves because they had nothing else to say, more like people who had already walked through storms, heartbreak, mistakes, and long ordinary years, quietly leaving signs behind for us.
And the signs looked so simple. That was the clever part.
Simple enough to remember, deep enough to come back years later and mean something completely new.
Which is probably why those lines still live in our heads like background music.
Even when we pretend not to hear them.
Especially then.
Especially then.
All right, since today's conversation was full of beautiful old sayings, family memories, and quiet life lessons, let's slow down for a moment and take our word tour through the words and phrases from today's episode.
These are the words that gave this episode its feeling. Some are warm, some are thoughtful, and all of them carry real meaning.
Our first word, nostalgic. If you feel nostalgic, you feel warm and emotional about the past. It's not just remembering something, it's feeling the mood, the place, and the heart of that memory.
For example, this conversation made me feel nostalgic for quiet evenings at my grandmother's house.
Or, that old proverb made her strangely nostalgic for her childhood. Repeat, nostalgic.
Nostalgic.
Next, reassuring. If something is reassuring, it makes you feel calmer, safer, or less worried. It gives you a quiet sense of comfort.
For example, hearing my mother's old advice felt reassuring in that stressful moment.
Or, his calm voice was very reassuring when everything felt uncertain. Repeat, reassuring.
Reassuring.
Now, humbling. If something is humbling, it reminds you that life is bigger than your pride or your plans. It brings you back to earth in a useful way.
For example, that experience was humbling because it showed me how little I really understood at the time.
Or, it was humbling to realize that my grandmother had been right all along. Repeat, humbling.
Humbling.
Next, perspective. Perspective is the way you see and understand something. When you gain perspective, you begin to see life more clearly, often from a wider and wiser angle.
For example, age gave him a new perspective on the advice he used to ignore.
Or, that experience completely changed my perspective on what really matters. Repeat, perspective.
Perspective.
Now, stubborn. If someone is stubborn, they do not change their mind easily. They keep holding on even when someone is trying to help them see things differently.
For example, I was too stubborn to listen when my elders were trying to guide me.
Or, she is kind but very stubborn when she believes she is right. Repeat, stubborn.
Stubborn.
Next, resonate. If something resonates with you, it feels deeply true or meaningful. It stays in your mind and heart long after you first hear it.
For example, that old proverb resonates with me much more now than it did when I was young.
Or, her words resonated with me because I had lived through something very similar. Repeat, resonate.
Resonate.
Now, our first idiom, learn the hard way. If you learn something the hard way, you learn it through pain, mistakes, or disappointment instead of easy advice.
For example, I learned the hard way that actions really do matter more than promises.
Or, he learned the hard way that ignoring small problems usually makes them bigger. Repeat, learn the hard way.
Learn the hard way.
Next, hit home. If something hits home, it feels very personal and very true. It touches you deeply because it connects directly with your own life.
For example, that old line about time really hit home when I thought about my grandfather.
Or, her words hit home because I had been feeling exactly the same way. Repeat, hit home.
Hit home.
Now, our phrasal verb, look back on. To look back on something means to think about a time in your past from where you are now, usually with more understanding, more age, and a different heart.
For example, when I look back on those years, I understand my elders so much better.
Or, she looks back on her childhood with deep gratitude. Repeat, look back on.
Look back on.
And our final phrase, grow into. To grow into something means to slowly become ready for it over time. It may feel strange or distant at first, but later it begins to fit you naturally.
For example, we often grow into our elders' wisdom much later in life.
Or, at first the advice felt too big for me, but with time I grew into its meaning. Repeat, grow into.
Grow into.
And those were today's Word Tour words and phrases.
Beautiful words for a beautiful topic.
Truly. And what I love about these words is that they're not just useful for English, they help you talk about memory, family, growing up, and the quiet things life teaches us.
So don't try to memorize all of them at once. Choose 2 or 3 that really stayed with you and try using them in your own life this week.
And tell us in the comments, which word or phrase from today's Word Tour resonated with you the most?
We'd really love to hear from you.
We hope this episode brought back a few memories for you too.
The kind that stay with you quietly, even after the conversation ends.
Take care of your English.
And take care of your heart.
This is Luna.
And this is Leo.
And you've been listening to Mr. English Daily.
See you in the next episode.
Bye for now.